Welcome back to Eye on South Asia. What do Vikram Pandit of Citigroup, Indra Nooyi of PepsiCo, and Ajay Banga of MasterCard have in common? They're all of Indian American origin. They're all leaders of Fortune 500 companies. But a new study from the Center for Work, Life and Policy, a non-profit think tank based in New York City, says that they might be more the exceptions than the rule. The study says that what keeps Asians from making it to the top are subtle workplace biases that are masked by the general perception of Asians as a highly qualified, successful model minority. Today I have Ripa Rashid, who is the Executive Vice President at the Center. I just want to give her, Ripa, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sujeet.
She has worked across Europe, the Americas, and Asia Pacific as a management consultant. In the past, Ripa has worked for, among others, Booz Allen Hamilton, MetLife, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Mitchell Madison Group. Ripa is also the co-author of The Battle for Female Talent in Emerging Markets, which came out from the Harvard Business Review, a series of BRIC, the Brazil, Russia, India, China country reports, and Winning the War for Talent in Emerging Markets, which is due next month from the Harvard Business Press. She holds degrees in astronomy and astrophysics from Harvard University, an MA in anthropology from New York University, and an MBA from INSEAD in Singapore.
So, and in France.
And in France. So did you go to the Singapore campus or in France?
I did both.
Okay.
I did both.
So does, this something which I could do an entire interview just based on your academic credentials. So Ripa, what was the basis for this study?
Well, the study was really prompted by some of our companies that are part of the Hidden Brain Drain Task Force. The task force is a consortium of 67 organizations, mostly Fortune 500 companies, but also multilaterals, that are working together really to address issues around the new streams of talent in the global workforce. What are the new streams of talent? Women, ethnic minorities, individuals who are really not getting to the top. So, the numbers you cited earlier kind of demonstrate that. 3% of Fortune 100 global CEOs are women. So our work really focuses on understanding what are the dynamics that hold these new streams of talent back. And the Asians in America study really came out of the realization from many of the industries in the US, financial services, pharmaceuticals, professional services, which are recruiting Asian Americans in huge numbers at the entry levels, but they're just not making it to the top.
One question I had was, is it fair to actually equate all the Asians under one ethnic umbrella? Because, the South Asians, the Indians, the Pakistanis, the Bangladeshis would love to believe that they have the same athletic capabilities as the Japanese, the Chinese, and the Koreans. But when it comes to the Olympics or the Asian Games, the medals tally tell a different story. So how, so what was the basis for, is it fair to actually equate them under one ethnic umbrella?
It's a fair point. I mean, Asians, however, are only 5% of the U.S. population. And this is Asians including East Asians, Southeast Asians, and South Asians. So the numbers aren't large. However, when you look at academia, 15 to 25% of Ivy League enrollment are comprised of Asians. And if you look at places like Stanford, MIT, Berkeley, the numbers are even higher. So we did look at differences because going in, we really wanted to be attentive to the nuances within this large category. I mean, obviously, it's hard to generalize. Asians in the U.S. come from countries that comprise over 60% of the world's population. So we're trying to generalize across a vast number of cultures, vast number of ethnic and linguistic groups. So obviously, that's a challenge. One surprise from our research, from the quantitative research, really is that the similarities outweigh the differences between the different groups of Asians. I'll give you one example. One of the areas where people assume that South Asians are much stronger at communications and East Asians maybe not so. We actually found that when it comes to sharing a new idea, there's not that much difference. So I think one of the things we did do in this research is explode a number of myths around the differences.
What I really found interesting was, the high number of Asian origin students at Ivy League universities,
Yeah.
but when it comes to corporate America, they seem to have a hard time. As the report says, they hit a bamboo ceiling. They don't really rise to the top. The numbers are startling. I mean, the Asian American students account for 15 to 25% of Ivy League enrollment, 24% at Stanford, and a stunning 46% at UC Berkeley. Now, of course, like the population of states like California and Texas from the last census have doubled. So you do expect Asian origin, especially Chinese and Indians, to be in large numbers. But what really strikes me is that the entire groundwork for going through a process, academic excellence at high school, where you do all these extra social and extracurricular activities to get into an Ivy League institution. And through high school and college, you seem to do well, and then you hit a roadblock when it comes to corporate America.
Sure. I think there are a couple of dynamics going on here. The first piece is often the Asians we're talking about are the first people in their entire families to enter corporate America. So often, many Asians who came here, particularly from South Asia, were engineers, doctors, professions that were not mainstream in corporate America. So the rules of the games are pretty unfamiliar. As someone in our interviews said, regardless of whether you were born in Mumbai or born in San Francisco, we all pretty much have to start from zero in corporate America. So that's really one challenge. The other piece is really this myth of the meritocracy. Again, I don't know if Asians are necessarily having trouble in schools, like you pointed out, checking all the boxes around extracurricular activities. But when it comes to the workplace, we heard loud and clear that it was much, much harder to fit in. There was a big divide between the personal and the professional. There's also a big struggle in navigating up, finding sponsors for yourself, building that relationship capital. That's really essential. And there are a lot of unwritten rules there. In corporate America. It's like a separate tribe, a separate culture that we enter into. And so I think what this study hopefully
does... Is it like
does,
the white male bastion,
absolutely.
What happened in the South, is that also in corporate America? So difficult to break into that?
It's, when you look at Fortune 500 CEOs, over 90% are white males, right? So the tone of most of these organizations, the culture is set at the top. And when people look down for their successors, they're looking for mini-me's. They're looking for people they're comfortable with. They're looking for people that they trust. And they may trust Asians, but they're not. That's one of the interesting discoveries here, that they're not that comfortable with Asians. Hence, Asians still feel like outsiders. So it's this element of ability to build trust, because I think Asians are hugely valued for the expertise and skills and dedication that they bring to the workplace. But when it comes to getting to the C-suite level and the pipeline immediately below that, it's a struggle, because that still remains vastly Caucasian
So this
in America.
study by the Center for Work-Life Policy might be groundbreaking in a way, because it seems to suggest that surrounding yourself with only brown kids in school or in university, even they are all of have got like these great academic credentials, might actually prove to be harmful in the long run. When you actually go to a workplace which has people mostly of white origin running the place, it's difficult to actually assimilate in the work environment. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes and no. Obviously, when you do enter corporate America, the numbers aren't going to be as large. But interestingly, Fortune 500 companies struggle to hire Hispanics and African Americans into the junior part of their pipeline. No such problem with Asians, because, there's lots of us coming out of all the top schools, of all the top professional schools, get from the PhD programs, but not so many African Americans and Hispanics. So at entry levels, you actually might find lots of other peers who look like you, other Asians. The issue really becomes around isolation and being able to reach out and connect when the rules of the game change, when it goes from purely proving yourself to also having to have a network of professional support. And I'm not suggesting that people go out and play political games. What we are suggesting is be aware that every relationship that you build professionally is important.
This is as important as going to a temple as to a bar. Is that what you're saying? Like, maintain your ethnic identity, but also, participate in all the outside the office activities as well? Or?
Sure, as much as you can. Obviously, I mean, one of the things we do look at is the fabric of your personal relations. And Asians have a very different network. I mean, we are much more integrated into our family structures. This was a voyage of self-discovery for me during the study. I realized why I really always am feeling so overburdened. I have so many personal family responsibilities and obligations that I love. I would not live without them, but I also want to excel at work. So that's very different, I think.
Well, Ripa, one of the things, key findings of the study seem to actually be contradictory. It says that Asians are more likely than Caucasians to aspire to hold a top job, like 64% of Asians versus 52% for Caucasians. And Asians are also, likely than other groups to value being highly compensated. But they also rebel if they also ask for a pay raise when they feel that they really deserve it. So it seems that the Asian American population, I mean, in corporate America, are pretty ambitious. They really ask, for their rights, but they really don't. Even then, it seems to be, as we were discussing before the show started, corporate America loves to toot its own horn.
Yes.
So is that a contradictory thing to be, over ambitious and to ask for your own rights, even though they're not completely being accepted, or is it better to just, stay meek at the workplace but be highly productive?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely nobody should stay meek in the workplace. Continue to be highly productive, obviously. I think the challenge is really to consider this element of networking, of getting to know people, of getting beyond the face in the mirror, as I like to say, because, we're all human beings. We have commonalities that may, intersect around food, around travel, around music. And, we're all, at the end of the day, around families, around schools. So let's look beyond the face in the mirror. I think the contradiction you point out is a very interesting one. Asians are highly ambitious, not surprising at all, right? Given that they're succeeding so well academically. So the ambition that takes them into Ivy League schools and into medical schools and law schools and MBA programs continues on into the workplace. That's not going to evaporate overnight. And it was quite surprising that Asians are just as likely as everybody else in the workplace to ask for a pay raise or a promotion. It's assumed that Asians are pretty acquiescent and held back and are not asking for things. We definitely exploded that myth.
But then also the study says that Asians are more than 3 times as likely as Caucasians and significantly more than the African Americans and the Hispanics to scale back at work, reduce their ambitions, and in fact, work fewer hours and even consider quitting. So is that,
what's going on? Good question. The short answer is they may be asking, but they don't seem to be getting what they want.
Okay.
So hence they feel stalled. And so the barriers, the elements of this bamboo ceiling that we've described here are pretty subtle. So you can ask for a pay raise, you may ask for a promotion, but you're only going to get it, particularly at a certain point in your career, if people know you, like you, and trust you.
I'm running out of time, but I want you to give me a solution. And what is the, for the future, do you see more Asian Americans breaking into the top echelon of corporate America?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm an optimist, but I think the data speaks to this as well. That if Asians are so ambitious and Asians are doing so well and are such valued parts of the, pipeline for corporate America, there's no going back. But we do need to be very cognizant about navigating this system. So I think it's a two-way street. Firstly, Asians need to understand the system and move a little towards being able to navigate it in a more savvy way. So don't be afraid to self-promote. Don't think of it as self-promoting. Think of it as advocating for yourself, because no one else is going to do it. But organizations also need to shift. I think having so many Asian CEOs, numbers are still small, but they're there, and they're in big, prominent companies, is going to slowly shift corporate leadership types. So it's not just the Jack Welch or Donald Trump model that prevails, that it's a more inclusive model. And particularly, as we know, given today's economic forecasts, who knows where the Western world is going? A lot of business opportunities are going to happen in India and China. So what better opportunity for Asian Americans to thrive in corporate America by being cultural bridges?
Thank you so much, Ripa, for being on Eye on South Asia. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it for this week. Next week, we'll see you again. Same show, same channel, with more news, events, and happenings of South Asian community. And you can also watch us on YouTube. Till then, this is me, Fairy Bath, signing off. Take care. Goodbye.
This is Sujeet Rajan. Have a great weekend.